this is Mr. Coates, and this is Biology Honors Lecture on Biochemistry or Carbon-Based Molecules. Okay, one of the best places to start when we talk about biological molecules is remembering what an actual molecule is. Remember, molecules are a group of atoms, two or more usually, that are bonded covalently. This means that they share pairs of electrons. Now, when we display molecules, we usually show them in two different forms. We can show them in the chemical formula, or we can show them in the structural formula. So let's take a look at water real quick. Water has the chemical formula, everyone should know, is H2O. That's the chemical formula for water. However, if you draw the structural formula for water, the structural formula shows the arrangement of the atoms in the molecules. So we have an oxygen that is bonded to one hydrogen in this direction and another hydrogen in this direction. So this would be the structural formula of water, and this is the chemical formula. But once again, here's a look at water. And then we have carbon dioxide here. Carbon dioxide, if we look at this, there's two lines between the oxygens and the carbons. This means that there's a double bond, or a double covalent bond. There's actually two pairs of electrons being shared between these two atoms. So that's what a double bond is. We can get to bigger molecules. So glucose, one of the most important molecules you're going to learn in this class. This is what glucose looks here. And sometimes scientists will shorten the chemical formula of large chemicals, or the structural formula of large chemicals, and leave out the carbons in these areas. And so you don't see carbons over here, but they're there. Okay? And so these are different structural formulas. And you also might see glucose as just a octagon here, a hexagon with an O up there. And so that could symbolize glucose as well. So be aware of those different ways to structurally show different molecules. Now, when molecules react together, we have these chemical reactions. Chemical reactions rearrange molecules, they break bonds, and they form new substances. And so parts of a chemical reaction. So let's look at this. This is the actual building of water, the making of water. So when water is created, then we have, this is two hydrogen molecules. So it's 2H2. So you have two atoms of hydrogen bonded together here, and you have two of those molecules together, plus one molecule of oxygen. This is two atoms of oxygen here bonded covalently. So if we do the structural, we have those, and then we get two molecules of water plus some energy out when we create this. On one side we have what we call the reactants. On the other side, this side here, are the products. So for any chemical reaction, you will have both reactants and products. And so the products are what you get out at the end. The reactants are what you start out with. Now when we talk about molecules in biology, a lot of the molecules we're going to talk about are organic molecules. Now a lot of people get this confused with the organic health food craze. Just because it's organic doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy. In this case, organic molecules are molecules that contain lots of carbons in them, and most living things are made out of organic molecules. There are some exceptions. For example, carbon dioxide, even though it has a carbon in it, is not an organic molecule. Usually organic molecules contain two or more carbons in there. However, there's another example here, our exception, and that is methane. Methane's chemical formula is CH4, and it's an organic molecule, but it only has one carbon in it. Now, one of the things about carbon, it's a very special atom, and it allows itself to be bonded to four other atoms at the same time. And this is because if we look at the outer, this is the electron shell here of the carbon atom. Carbon has 6 electrons. 2 of those electrons are actually in the inner shell, and 4 are on the outer shell. Now, the outer shell likes to have 8 electrons in it. So there are actually 4 blank spots on this carbon atom that it can bond with or share electrons to make covalent bonds. And this makes carbon a very versatile atom in making molecules. Now, as I said, there are some non-based carbon molecules in life that are very important. For example, oxygen. Even though you find oxygen inside living organisms, the molecule of oxygen, O2, which is what this is O2, is not organic. Same thing with CO2. I mentioned this earlier. Even though it has a carbon in it, CO2 is not organic. And then water. Of course, organisms have lots of water in them, and it is not organic either. Okay, so anything that's non-carbon based is considered to be inorganic. Now, when we look at organic molecules, they're made up of different groups sometimes, and we call these functional groups. And functional groups are groups of atoms that are bonded together in certain arrangements, and they function in predictable ways, or they react during chemical reactions in predictable ways. So these are some of the four main ones that you'll see on some of our biological molecules as we move through the class. So if we have a single bonded hydrogen to an oxygen, that's a hydroxyl group right here. If we have a carbon that is double bonded to an oxygen and then single bonded to maybe another carbon or maybe a hydrogen and then another carbon or another hydrogen on the other side, that's a carbonyl group. Then if you have a carbon that is doubly bonded to an oxygen and then single bonded to an oxygen, which is single bonded to a hydrogen, that's a carboxyl group. And then one of the most important groups to recognize here is the amino group. The amino group has nitrogen in it bonded to two hydrogens, and then the nitrogen is bonded to something else. The amino group is a major group found in all proteins, and this is one of the ways that you can tell if you're looking at a protein. If you see an amino group in something on a screen, you see it in the structural formula, that means you're probably looking at a protein. So these are the different functional groups that you will find in organic molecules. Now, when we talk about organic molecules, we're going to talk about two sizes of molecules. And a good example here is vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride has two carbons that are double bonded to each other, bonded to hydrogens, except for this one over here is bonded to a chlorine. So this is vinyl chloride. And when we put a bunch of these monomers together of vinyl chloride, we get what we call polyvinyl chloride. So this is a polymer. And so the repeating unit here is this vinyl chloride. And you might have recognized polyvinyl chloride, PVC pipe. Okay, the white plumbing pipe that you see, plastic pipe that you see in Home Depot, this is PVC. And it's made out of all these carbons and hydrogens with these chlorines every once in a while in it. And so its repeating units make this polymer of this monomer over here, vinyl chloride. Now, another important monomer that we'll see in a minute is glucose. Organic polymers are classified into four main groups. The first one is a carbohydrate, the second one is a lipid, the third one is a protein, and the fourth one are nucleic acids. And we're going to see all of these groups as we progress through the lectures. The first group, carbohydrates. The function of carbohydrates for living things is it provides the main energy source for living organisms. Carbohydrates are composed of sugar molecules. In fact, sugar by itself is considered a carbohydrate. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of sugar that you put on your cereal. I'm talking about a sugar molecule called glucose. Okay, this is the main type of sugar that plants create. One of the things about carbohydrates is that most of them are hydrophilic. This means that they dissolve easily in water. And that's very important because you need to be able to dissolve these in water so you can get them through your bloodstream and fuel your cells. Two important carbohydrates or monomers of carbohydrates are glucose, which is this one right here. Like I said, this is one of the most important ones that you are going to see in this class. And then another one here that's made by fruits. Okay, this is in vegetables. This is called fructose. A lot of times you hear bad things about fructose. You hear about it in high fructose corn syrup. Well, fructose is nothing more than another organic monosaccharide or monomer of sugars. And you find it, like I said, in fruits, and you find it in vegetables. Like I said, glucose is produced by other plants here. Now, I mentioned the word monosaccharide. When we talk about monosaccharides, what we mean is one sugar. Saccharide means sugar. Mono means one. And it's a type of monomer. Okay, a monosaccharide is a monomer, but it's a monomer of carbohydrates. There are several different types of carbohydrate monomers out there. We've talked about glucose. Glucose is the number one that you really need to remember. We mentioned fructose a minute ago. Galactose. Now, galactose is kind of special because it is actually a sugar found in animals rather than in plants. These other two are created by plants. This one is created by animals. And then another one, which is a little bit different, is called ribose. Now, ribose is a 5-carbon sugar. So instead of having 6 carbons in it, it will have 5. So it kind of looks like this weird pentagon with an oxygen up here. All right, so when we put single monomer sugars together, we get long chains called polysaccharides, which is just another name for a carbohydrate polymer. Now, polysaccharides can be different forms, and we also call them complex carbohydrates. A lot of times on your food boxes, you'll see the word complex carbohydrate. This just means long chains of sugars put together. So another way to look at sugars are each one of these units that you see here in starch is a glucose molecule, and we bonded glucose molecules together here in a long chain. Starch is a major polysaccharide. It's made up of long chains of glucose. Cellulose is another one. Cellulose is created in plants, and it makes up plant cell walls. And this graphic on this side shows cellulose. So you have all these glucose bonded together, and eventually the fibers then come together to create these cell walls of the plants. Now, cellulose is very important in our diet. It is actually the fiber that we need in our diet to keep us regular. And so we cannot digest cellulose. We can digest starch because we have the enzyme that breaks it apart, but we actually lack the enzyme that breaks apart cellulose. Now, termites, they have the enzyme in their gut to break down cellulose, and this is why termites can actually eat wood. The last type of polysaccharide I'm going to talk about is glycogen. Glycogen is created by animals, so it is a polysaccharide created usually in the livers of a lot of organisms, and so it is a large polysaccharide. Now, how do we create polysaccharides from monosaccharides? We do this through a reaction called dehydration synthesis. Remember, these are all molecules. In order to put the molecules together, we have some kind of chemical reaction. So we have products and we have reactants. So in this case, over here, we have a short polymer. And this short polymer has 3 monomers, 1, 2, 3. And these monomers could be anything. We can call them glucose units if you want to at this point. And so at the end of the polymers, usually part of the glucose molecule has a single hydrogen somewhere, or it has a single hydroxyl group here. And so what happens is that during this reaction, we add a polymer to another monomer, which is this one here, another glucose possibly, and in the process, the combination of this hydrogen and this hydroxyl group create water. And water is given off as a product in this. So our products then are this giant polymer, this bigger polymer down here with 4 units, and water. So our reactants were the short polymer and a monomer, and our reactants were the long polymer and the water molecule. This is dehydration synthesis because you take water away in order to create a polymer. Now, when we break polymers apart, like when we break starch apart after we eat like a piece of bread, okay, then we go through an opposite reaction. This opposite reaction is called hydrolysis, where water is used to break the unit off of a polymer, so the single monomer off of a polymer. So in this case, our reactants are a water and a large polymer, and our products are a smaller polymer and a monomer in this case. And so water breaks apart, and the hydrogen goes to one side and the hydroxyl group goes to the other. So this is hydrolysis. We add water to break a polymer. I hope that was helpful in helping you understand how organic molecules are formed and the importance of carbon. Stay tuned for the comprehension questions that you will see after I stop talking here, and make sure you have those answers ready to go in class in small group.